I'm joined by Kelly Sloan. He's a policy fellow at the Centennial Institute, a think tank based in Denver, Colorado. So I've just went through those figures there. What is difficult is that Western governments want to drop Russia's revenues, but also limit the cost to themselves when they are so reliant on Russia. So have they found the right line there?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. They are, EU in particular is still heavily dependent on Russian oil and natural gas, particularly natural gas, but they don't want to fund, the Russian military capabilities. So this is about the only avenue that they really had, was to put a cap on it. Now, where that cap ought to be kind of depends on what your point of view is. Poland, of course, negotiated for that cap to be a little bit lower than some of the other EU countries had wanted, especially those that are more dependent on Russian oil. Ukraine, of course, says that that cap is nowhere near enough. That's not going to do anything to curtail, Russian exports or to really hurt the Russian economy. And they're probably right. At setting the cap at $60, that's not far below where it's at, roughly around $67 right now. So it's not going to be a whole lot of a disincentive to Russia to not export, since they are going to need the revenue. Now, Russia, of course, has threatened in response to this to cut off natural gas and oil supplies to the West and elsewhere. By some accounts, they've been threatening to cut off as much as 3 million barrels a day, even as much as 5 million barrels a day. And the effect of that, of course, would be to drive the world oil price up to roughly around $190 by most accounts, which would be equally devastating to Western economies. As your earlier report kind of pointed out, this has largely become, Ukraine war has largely become an energy war, both on the battlefield with Russian strikes focusing now on energy infrastructure in Ukraine, and also externally on the international front, with the West trying to respond economically the only way it really can, with some export bans and so forth, and now this cap, and then Russia kind of countering with its own threats to to cease export, cease production. It's a somewhat empty threat. Russia does need the revenue. And of course, Russia also knows that OPEC certainly still has some capability to increase its own production to counteract any threat of Russia taking supply off the market, because OPEC doesn't really want to see oil at $190 and see what that would do to its international demand and demand markets. So overall, this is as other people pointed out, kind of an indication of how vulnerable Europe is because of, in my estimation, poor energy choices made in the past. They haven't built up their nuclear capability, other than places like France. Germany has been taking nuclear power offline until recently. There hasn't been much construction of LNG export terminals to bring natural gas in from places like Canada and the United States. So that's kind of where they're kind of put themselves in this position.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for your analysis. That's Kelly Sloan. He's a policy fellow at the Centennial Institute. Thank you for your brief time, but your quite coverage there. Thank you, Kelly.